Welcome back. We're on Isles Time, episode number 2. Brendan Yerkes, Cole Healy. Excited to bring our second episode of the podcast discussing Islanders. We think the first one went really well. It's been an exciting and interesting time. So, as we're leading up to the draft here, it's time for episode 2. So, we got a lot to discuss today, but I think we're pretty happy with how the first episode came out and how we're looking here.
Yeah, no, it's definitely went over pretty well. It's been what, like 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks since the last one, so we got some new stuff going on in the hockey world, whether it's the Islanders or just the NHL overall. And yeah, draft coming up next Friday, so we got exciting time coming up for the Islanders.
Can't wait. And those watching the video, I got the NHL draft shirt on from Montreal a couple years ago. That was eventful. That's when we traded for Romanov, so that was unexpected. But
Yeah, that
will there
was
anything unexpected this year? Is the question.
yeah. I mean, it's funny you mentioned Romano. We can I'll kind of get into this later, but I've seen his people saying maybe have him in a trade.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
not gonna say
possible.
I'd want that. Again, we can go into more detail later on, but I think, yeah, in a year where we somehow win the lottery, I would not be surprised with another unexpected move happening on draft
Right.
day.
And like you said, we'll talk about it a little bit later. But with that, just with the defenseman projected to be the top pick, we both want the defenseman. Already a million defensemen on the roster. Somebody's got to go. So we'll discuss that in a little bit. Before we preview this episode, make sure to follow our social medias at On Isles Time on Instagram and X. We're posting clips from the show and providing more Islanders content. You can follow me on Twitter at Brendan BRENDAN underscore YERKES on X and Instagram, and you can follow Cole on Twitter or X. I don't know. I keep going back and forth with those at Cole COLE Healy HEALY 0. All right, today we got on tap. We have the draft combine that came and went last weekend, with the Islanders being in the spotlight, not as they always are. I mean, the Stanley Cup Finals obviously going on, but they're in the spotlight for the rest of the hockey world, being that they hold the number one pick. So that's kind of fun. Nobody ever talks about the Islanders like that. So lots to unpack from that. Signings, the Islanders made 2 signings that Lou seems like he had wrapped up before Darch took over. Talk about those. A quick look into the offseason. Some names that are out there that fit the Islanders, some potential big fish, some smaller players they could target, and what they're going to do with a lot of their players that are on expiring contracts or have come up in rumors. They hired their new assistant coaches, at least Patrick Waugh did, as we expected. He gets his full assistant staff now, and they hired a new AGM today. Actually, we're recording this on Monday. And one more thing that we'll talk about and we'll get to later, which is just shocking that it even happened. But without further ado, I think we should get right into it. The draft combine. Matthew Schaefer, front and center, and you gotta love it. And I think it just everything that's been going on with Schaefer, and we had this discussion last week, and we've been having this discussion since May the 5th, that it's just been Schaefer and Schaefer, and the more closer we get to the draft, the more and more teams like a lock, and it needs to be a lock. I know the Hagens crowd is trying to crawl back in, but just the way he plays the game, the way other players in the draft are talking about him. I think they asked the second best D man in the draft. I think was it Radim Murka, I think it was, or maybe it was
Yeah,
somebody else. They asked, where do you think you think you're the best defenseman in the draft? Where do you think you rank? And he goes, I think I'm the best one behind Schaefer. And for a player to say that about another player is crazy. You have Michael Misa talking him up. Everybody else asked about Matthew Schaefer. Porter Martone, oh, not Porter Martone. It was Landon Dupont, first overall pick, projected 2 years, raving about Matthew Schaefer. And this is all about on ice stuff and how good of a guy he is. And then there's more stories about him visiting, the hospital and with meeting with children who've lost their parents, because he's obviously had that situation happen to him. And he just seems like a perfect fit. He's even talked himself about how the Islanders are a great organization. He's met with Matthew Darch, and now, he'd be a great fit for him there. So I think everything's pointing in that direction, and I think I couldn't be happier with that result.
yeah, Schaefer definitely. I mean, we've all known this. Schaefer's the guy. Yeah, just he's exactly what you want in a first overall pick, right? Yeah, maybe he's not a Celebrant, he's not a Bedard, but everyone's making those comparisons. Those guys were huge prospects, right? Like Schaefer is gonna be a number one D man. Like, he's gonna be a stud in the NHL. And just with what we've seen about his personality, obviously he lost his mother when he was 16. Yeah, he skipped his graduation to go speak with these kids. Like that just says so much about his character. I mean, that's a future captain right there. And having that personality I feel like will make it easier on him. Sometimes these guys have tough transitions to the NHL. And with Schaefer, yeah, I'm sure he's gonna have that, right? But seems like he's got the mindset, he's got the personality to kind of push through that And we see a lot of these guys kind of fizzle out, high big name prospects, and they don't really pan out. Shaver seems like the type of guy where, yeah, he's gonna have these challenges, but he's gonna, just like he has his whole life, he's gonna find a way to kind of push through that and overcome that and become the stud number one defenseman that everyone's hoping for.
He's the perfect defenseman. I mean, you look at the 2009 draft, and I'm not going to say the Islanders made the wrong decision selecting Tavares, but you see that Victor Hedman is generational. And again, no two players are the same. You can compare all you want. Like I've seen Schaefer get compared to a bunch of players. I mean, Cale Makar, they say he kind of plays like him, but you can't compare him to Cale Makar. I've seen Miro Heiskanen a lot. That one I like a lot, that comparison. I'm watching more of the way he plays. Like he's just got that skating ability, the way he handles the puck. He can make really good moves around players. Good backhand. I've seen Drew Doughty. I don't really see that as much because I think he's more of like a stay-at-home defenseman with like a booming shot. Where obviously Schaefer, I've seen a lot of highlights. Like he could rip it from the point, slap shot or wrist shot. He's got like a wicked shot. But I don't think the Doughty comparison is really as good. And I've seen a lot. I've seen Roman Yossi. I've seen Jake Sanderson. I've seen so many different names. But again, I mean, if you're getting compared to that many good defensive players, that's got to be something good. And back to Hedman, he was, he's like top 5 in points from that draft. I just saw that graphic today, actually. And he's a defenseman. So the Islanders at that point made the right choice. Just the whole Tavares thing was unfortunate the way it happened. But now I think it's time to take the defenseman because you have a lot of good forwards. You have 2 big time forward prospects. And now you get Matthew Schaefer into the fold, who's, again, said that he wants, like, he'd be loved to be an Islander. Like, he's from Toronto, so everybody was a little skeptical about that. Like, you take the best player, and just all the things I heard about him, and even he was at the Stanley Cup final, like meeting with McDavid, having breakfast with Brad Marchand, the things he's saying about like, oh, Matthew Darch, he deserves that job, like I saw, and how he's just enjoying the process, and he deserves it for obviously what he's gone through, and he if he wants to be an Islander, they should make him an Islander. And, I mean, obviously, if you want to be the number one pick, but he seems like he'd be very happy to come here. And I think that's very important.
Yeah, definitely. He just seems just that maturity. You don't really see that in a lot of these guys, and especially with him. He's like what 10 days away from being next year's draft.
Right.
I think it's like September 4th, September 5th, his birthday, with the 15th is the cutoff. And just seeing all that, he's saying all the right things. He just seems like the great. It's almost too good. I feel like in terms of the off ice stuff, the character, and yeah, like I said, that's exactly what you want out of a top pick who's going to probably be the future face of your franchise.
Right. And would you have liked to seen more games from him last year? Absolutely. But the games he did play, he impressed. And, everything is just the closer we get to the draft, the more and more likely he's the number one pick and that he separates himself from those other players. And again, good players behind him, like Michael Misa. I mean, I think everyone knows now Schaefer is going to go to the Islanders because I saw Michael Misa's roommate, I think it was Malcolm Spence, he's also in the draft, said, yeah, like he's probably wants to go to the Sharks, expecting to go to the Sharks. I think because that's what he knows is going to probably happen. And then the rest of the draft falls behind him with James Hagan sliding, who we discussed last time, Long Island kid. And he's just saying everything. I mean, he wants to come here. And I'm saying, if he wants to come here so bad, like, yes, I'd be happy if the Islanders traded up back into the draft to try and get him. But he could just sign here when he's ready, Like, we have to take the best player. And, he said, I want to win a Stanley Cup with the Islanders, and nothing would be better than that, obviously. Listen, like, it's unfortunate. It's a business. And I don't want to be turning away somebody like that because it's awesome. But he said many times he wants to go to the Islanders on many different occasions in many different ways. So it's not just like a bad quote. Like, he said it a lot that he wants to be an Islander. Just it's probably not going to happen, but we'll see. I mean, Darch talked to Bill Armstrong at the combine to see if there's I mean, who knows what they talked about, but I'm sure the 4th pick was mentioned as Utah is a good. It makes sense because they're a team trying to get into the playoff from the outside, add some vets, add some ready now players. So it makes sense on both sides.
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, Hagens would be great if we could trade back up for him. Definitely not the guy I want. There's so many people. It's at the point now where he's getting disrespected. I think we
Yeah.
talked about this last time around. It's just like like Craig Button today had him at 8. Like that's just not. That just seems unfair. In my opinion, definitely a top 4 player in this class. Yeah, maybe you want to see him 5, 6. Right, there's some guys that are kind of interchangeable up there, but I personally think he's top 4. You can make the argument for top 3. And yeah, again, like you said, Long Island guy. Like he'd be a great Islander, and like everyone would love him, and he would obviously love playing for the Islanders. But you got to make the move that's smart for the team at this moment in time, and that's taking the best player available, which is Matthew Schaefer. But yeah, no, we could somehow trade up with Utah, and yeah, there's no way that pick didn't come up in those conversations with Darsh and Armstrong. Armstrong. Yeah, so we'll see. There's people that are calling for these trades to be like happening now or within the next week. Like if a trade's gonna happen, it's gonna happen on June 27th during the
Right.
draft,
And
and
if
like it's gonna be
the framework would be worked on now, it would just be as a matter of if he's there, because they're not going to trade him if he's not there. I mean, unless they like somebody else, but that's not going to
right.
happen. I mean, we're not going to really go too far into the draft past that because I mean, there's so many prospects. It's like after the first round, it's really where teams rank players. Once you get to the bottom half of the second round, once all like the first round talents are gone, then it's just whatever teams think. You know, like there could be a player that your team takes in the third round that some teams don't even have on their board or don't know who he is. That's just how the NHL draft works. Because it's not like football where everybody's in college and you draft him from there. It's wherever you see a player. Some people might not know who a player is, and some teams might have a third round grade on a guy that's again somebody that other teams don't have anywhere on their board. So I'm sure the scouting is important. Obviously, the Islanders are gonna be involved and look for some high quality players in the middle rounds. But that's where things stand for at least at the top. I think they're in a good position, and we'll talk about the current setup of the team and what players that could be expendable in a trade with Utah, maybe even with Nashville and Barry Trotz if they want to get some better players instead of taking the draft selection. But you never know. Anyone could be a player. Doesn't happen often, but it's highly possible that this one of these moves are made. But looks like Schaefer is lining up to be an Islander, and I'm sure we'll have more before our next episode, which we're going to try to get in before the draft.
Yeah, no, Schaefer. Regardless of really who you whatever you may think, whoever you think we should take, like it's just a fun time to be a fan. It's good to see the Islanders involved in all this discussion around the league. And yeah, we got 11 more days till the first round. I can't wait.
Yep, breath of fresh air, getting some fun involved. Kind of opening access, and I think the last of the Lou era was completed. As now we'll move on here. Two signings. Kyle Palmieri gets a 2-year deal, 4.75 AAV, and everybody wants to complain about everything all the time. Where listen, is it a little much? I guess. I'll say I guess because I don't think it's that bad. But like, all right, it's not like 3 or 4, but the cap is going up, so everything's going up. You look at like Brock Nelson just signed, re-signed with Colorado. I mean, we're not going to really dive into that because that's kind of, not really relevant to us anymore. But he signed for 3 years and $7.5 million per year. Is he a better player than Kyle Palmieri? Absolutely. But Palmieri is very good, and the Islanders aren't tanking. He's going to score 20 goals next year, and now he has a beard. He might score 30 goals.
Yeah.
So, 2 years, 4.75, it's not going to kill you because you don't want your team to be horrible. There's no wingers on this team. So what do you have to lose? And yeah, Lou might have negotiated that deal and Dart's just honored it. Okay, well, he doesn't want his team to be horrible in his first year, and he's bringing back a familiar player who wanted to stay on a not that bad contract.
Yeah, it's like
Like I'm not gonna say it's a good contract, but it's only 2 years. It's like it's just a contract. It's over. Like it's not gonna
right.
kill you.
Yeah, I'm seeing it as like a transition deal, right? Some guys kind of sign bridge deals for themselves. This is kind of like a bridge deal, but in the grand scheme of the whole team. You got Cal Ritchie going to be playing this year. Eiserman's going back to college. Maybe he'll get some games in at the end of the year. We'll see. Schaefer, I personally think he's going to go back to juniors. So I
I
don't
think
think
he should or
maybe
college. I
we'll see him
mean,
a couple games
you know,
early on, like in that 9 game trial. But I don't think he's going to play the whole year. He shouldn't play the whole year. Um, but
well,
yeah, you
he's the
need a guy
same
like
weight. I didn't mention this before. He's the same weight I think I saw as Hagen's for being taller. So and obviously we said that with him being young, so he needs to fill out his frame and I think log big minutes on a junior team or college team, which is better. I honestly think junior would be better, even though college is better competition, just to see him play like 60 games plus. But
I agree.
again, whatever they do would be the right decision, I think.
Yeah, but yeah, going back to Palmieri, it's like he's here 2 more years. Like you're thinking that last year, Schaefer's going to be around, Eisenman's going to be around, Danny Nelson will probably be up by that point. We'll see if he's in
Quinn
Bridgeport.
Finley maybe makes a play.
Yeah, yeah, Finley. And it's just you need a guy like Palmieri. You need a vet. You lost Brock Nelson. Yeah, you lost his goals. You lost his presence in the room. You still got Lee. Maybe have Pajot. We'll get into him in a minute. But yeah, you just need guys like Palmieri that have been around, kind of help mentor the young guys. I mean, yeah, we still have Bo Horvat, still have Barzal, but you just need these guys who aren't being counted on to be the top producers like Horvat and Barzell. And yeah, like he took a pay cut compared to his last deal. He had what is it, 24 goals this year. He scored 30 the year before. He's still an effective player. He's still a good player. Um, and yeah, sure, his production went down after Nelson was traded, but I really wouldn't be too worried about that. I mean, the season was a lost cause at that point.
Right.
Um, like it's really not. It's not a bad deal. People, if you want to nitpick the no trade clause, yeah, sure. But to me, that's just giving him the respect. If he wants to go somewhere, he can kind of have a say in where he goes, like
Right.
we saw with Brock Nelson this year.
Which is what? So it's a full this year and a 16 next year.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like it's a 2 year contract. Like, so what?
yeah.
You know? And these things matter. Like, I think they're over loyal at times, the Islanders, but like you get like it's a like community feel team, but these things matter to players when they sign somewhere. Like I'm like you look at the Rangers, how they just disrespect everybody and they treat their players horribly. It's like, oh, you have a no trade clause, we don't care. We're gonna find a way to get rid of you, and we're just gonna like dump you and treat you like garbage until we trade you away, because that's what they seemingly do at this point. Where the Islanders, like, yeah, they're too loyal, they're too nice, but I think still keeping some of that. You know what? You had this deal lined up just because I'm here. Like, you know what? I mean, if it was like a horrible, horrible deal, I'm sure he would have like Darch, that being, would have renegotiated and be like, yeah, we can't give you that. But given the situation, they have a little bit of breathing room in the cap. Not too much, but some. And it's only a 2 year contract, and he's been here. You could at least honor that and be like, you know what? We'll honor this contract and, keep that loyalty, keep that good relationship between management and the players, because they always talk so highly over the last few years about that. I mean, the players, the management, the community. So, you want this to be an organization where people sign, and these things matter to players where it doesn't matter to the fan, about how there's respect and the perks of being on the Islanders. Because, yeah, it's not as easy to get someone to sign here as it is somewhere else. So that's why you have to be perfect in this regard. So that helps. He's going to score a lot of goals, be a good vet presence next year, depending on who he plays with. Like, he could be big for Cal Ritchie. I don't think Cal Ritchie will probably be on the third line, not the second line, but you never know what's going to happen. Things, injuries, people move up, power play. Like, you never know. These are the kind of things that are good. Like, everyone wants Cal Ritchie to get his shot. And, you put him with bad players, then he might not get a chance, He might
I don't
be
know
doomed from
who.
the start. You've seen this a million times with development. I just
Yeah,
want
like I
to see
was
the
about.
team be good. That's all it
Yeah,
is.
I was just about to bring up Nino Niederreiter. I don't know
Right.
exactly who he was playing with back when he was it 2011, 2012.
Yeah.
He had what, like 1 point in 50 games that 1 year. Like again, I don't know. That was a year or two before I started really following and started watching every game. But like, I mean, you just look at the rosters from those teams, and there's no way he was definitely in the bottom six. Yeah, he's just not on a good line. We saw how he struggled. For me, I hear about it obviously after the fact. You don't want to do that with Cal Ritchie. Like was he top 25 prospect? I feel like on a lot of lists. Um, you got to put him in a position to succeed. And yeah, a guy like Kyle Palmieri may not start on his line, but I'm sure at some point throughout the year they will be playing together. And it's just so important. Something could be something as small as pulling up the iPad on the bench. A certain defenseman kind of steps up, or there's so many different
Right.
in-game
It's
scenarios.
continuity. It's not baseball. You can't just get 9 new players.
Exactly.
You could slowly change the landscape of the roster, and and even next year if Yzerman plays, like Paul Murray could be a help for Yzerman too. Obviously
Yeah.
somewhat similar but different in ways. I think it's a really good move. The team was never going to tank. A rebuild is the worst idea possible. I mean, especially for them, the team losing money and the team not having the greatest attendance the last 2 years. You have to get better, and a rebuild would be the worst possible thing, because you look at a team like Detroit and they still haven't crawled out of it. Chicago has no signs of crawling out of it. The Sharks are crawling out of it. Some teams, sometimes it works, but
Yeah.
or
And then you
you but
look
you
at
really just got to get lucky in the lottery. I mean, the Sharks got Celebrini, they're going to get Misa, and they have Will Smith. The
Mhm.
Penguins years ago, and they got Crosby and Malkin. The Blackhawks, that when they were good, they got Kane and Taves and Duncan Keith. Like, these things, you got to get lucky, and the rebuild isn't going to work. And you have good players here, that the
Yeah.
retool is the best course of action. And it's not crazy to say that this could be a playoff team next year. They still have cap space to make moves. They have RFAs that are expendable in trades that they can get other players. Like, this team could look different, but still very similar, and make a push to the playoffs. It's not crazy to say that. And I think that there's fans that don't want to be in that spot, that they want them to lose. It's like the tank does nothing for you. You're not getting a high pick again. I mean, you might, but you're not. You're probably not going to win the lottery because it's just, again, we saw how it happened. It's just dumb luck.
Yeah,
And
then like
and
you
you
look
want to
at
be a fan of a team that's pushing for the playoffs. At least I do. I don't want to be watching a team that's losing all the time. And you still have good players. Why waste it? You could try. Now, I'm not saying they're going to win the whole thing, and I'm not even guaranteeing they make the playoffs, but they're going to be in the race with
yeah,
this roster.
yeah, then look at a team like Buffalo. Buffalo hasn't made the playoffs since what
Right.
2011, 2012. Like they've won the lottery several times. They've had so many high picks, and they still can't put it together. It's like people just think you're gonna, oh yeah, we gotta get some good picks. Yeah, be bad for a couple years. Like they think these picks are guaranteed things. And again, like Buffalo, I mean, a lot of these guys that they picked did end up having good careers, but so many of them are no longer with the Sabres. It doesn't work out there. And it's just like the core pieces are here for the Islanders. You got Matt Barzal, you got Bo Horvat, you got Ilya Sorokin, maybe Noah Dobson. We'll see what happens with him. We can talk about him.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, you're gonna have Schaefer on the back end. You got Cole Eiserman, you got Cal Ritchie. Like the pieces are here. We're in a much better position than a lot of other teams. And yeah, like Detroit hasn't made the playoffs since 2016 after making it, I think, 25 straight years. It's like these you'd like to build through the draft,
But
but
it
you
doesn't
can't
happen
always
overnight,
build through the draft. Yeah.
as you know. Like
Yes.
both seems like you brought them up. It's been like it feels like it's been like three different rebuilds, three different regimes, like at different times, people in charge. You build through the draft, but that doesn't happen overnight. So that's why you keep the vets, teach them the ways, and then you'd be like, all right, Palmieri, now you go. Now you don't re-sign him. Eiserman goes and plays right wing instead, like something like that. Like the Nelson, you trade Nelson for Richie. It's like I view Richie as like the Nelson replacement in a way. I mean, that's big expectations, but not right away. He's not going to score you 30 goals like Nelson did, but eventually he's going to be filling that two center spot. So you do things like that. And then the counterpoint to what I just said before about pushing for the playoffs, I've heard, well, all the last few years, all they would do is just push for the playoffs and getting in, losing the first round. Well, you know what? It's different this year because that was the same team that went to two Eastern Conference Finals that was hanging on and their ceiling was getting into the playoffs and losing. Now it's a team that's getting younger and trying to push further. And in the beginning, you want to see them push for the playoffs and make it into the first round, and obviously not just losing the first round, but you at least know that's not their ceiling. You're pushing there, where maybe it's the ceiling now, but you're going to keep building to the point where you get better and better, and not losing it where the best you can do is in the first round. If you get what I'm trying to say. So
Yeah,
it's
and
just
like
like you getting younger, you want to see a team that competes, and playoff experience matters. Look at the Senators this year. I mean, that's a team that hasn't been able to get in. They finally get in, and they lose in six. Frustrating, but now those players get a taste of the playoffs.
I was
That's
just about
big.
to add that. Yeah, like it's the playoff experience, even if it's only, 6 or 7 games for a lot of these young guys. Like that's important because they kind of see how these other guys who have been in the playoffs before kind of, whether it's like there's their daily routine beforehand, once they get to the rink, like there's just so many parts of it. And then they themselves get to play in these games. They get to know what it's like. Yeah, maybe the expectations aren't as high. You're not expecting the Islanders to win the cup next year. But if they get in, then they'll see the intensity. They'll see how everyone else is preparing. Then they say, okay, this is the level I have to be at. They get these games in. That way, next year, make the playoffs again. Okay, they're not. This isn't their first time in the playoffs. They've been in once already. Maybe it's two straight first round exits, right? And yeah, it's not obviously not ideal. You want to win the cup every year, but then it just keeps going. And then kind of like we saw with the Trotz group. Like obviously Trotz's first year, they made the second round, but so many of those guys were there in 2015 and 2016, and those runs kind of, or I may not call them runs, just those, the Washington series in 15, beating Florida in 16, and then the Tampa series, like those, it's just experience. You need experience, and then yeah, you can kind of see all of that come together in 19 when they swept Pittsburgh. I don't know, I feel like people underestimated how much of an impact those games have on players, even if
Right.
it's only 5 or 6 games.
And then we kind of went on this tangent just because of Palmieri signing, but it's just true
Yeah.
that like we both want to watch a competitive team, and blowing it up will never be the answer. Like the end of this year was hard to watch because you knew it was the end, and it was hard, and you don't want to root for your team to lose, and I never will. But it's just like at the end of this year, it was just getting hard to watch games because you knew it was the end of this group, and they needed to make a change, and they did. So that's where we are. And what I'm trying to say about pushing for the playoffs, like the two Carolina series that they just lost in the first round, they're like that's not what you want to see in the first round. But I think, like you said, 2015, I was going to bring that up. That Washington series, that's a team that was like young players entering their prime, getting their first taste of the playoffs, and they probably should have won that series, but they didn't. That's what you want to see moving forward, because then that's the group that ended up going to two conference finals, that core. So
Yep.
now it's reset. Now you want that again with the players they have now to do that, and then slowly build back up to getting to deep playoff runs consistently, where eventually you got to hope one goes your way. Like, see these teams that are in it every year, like Carolina, Dallas, they haven't broke through, but they're in it every year. Now, I'm not going to say that's a good place to be. I mean, you're in the play. I mean, I'm not going to complain if we're that good and we're making conference finals year after year, but they're still waiting to break through. But it starts with a couple of years of just making it in, and it's as just sneak in the playoffs and see what happens. And that's where it starts. So Palmieri, good. He's going to get, probably score 20 goals. That's what I'm expecting. Probably be around the 50-point range, I would think. I mean, I don't know if that's too lofty, but maybe 40, 50 points, I think is reasonable, maybe for the next 2 years. And then you're done with him, and I think that's a good place to be. So Palmieri resigns. One more extension, Adam Boquist, 1 year, 850K. I think that doesn't really move the needle too much. Good deal. Good to keep him around. I showed some potential in the games he played. Played forward a decent amount, which was interesting, just to fill spots. But I think Wall liked him a lot with how much he used him and the fact that he actually put him at forward. So I think another offseason training camp, he could potentially be a good bottom six pairing guy. Good to have around. They seem to like him. So I'm with it. So, nothing really too crazy to say there as
Yeah.
far as the D log jam goes. But I think that'll lead us to our next conversation after that. There's just so many defensemen and who was going to pick. But I don't know if you have anything you want to add on Boquist there.
Yeah, I mean, Bokus, he just seems like the exact type of player that Wah wants in his systems. Like he moves the puck. He's a good skater. I mean, he can chip in offensively. I think it was against the Sharks. He played wing. He had 2 assists. I could be wrong on that, but I know one of the games where he was at forward, he had 2 points. Yeah, like he's a good guy to stick around. He's a high draft pick. Didn't quite meet the expectations there. But some of these guys are late bloomers. I think he's still what, like 25 maybe,
He's young, and he
24.
also got thrown into the fire when he was on. I believe he was on Chicago, and they
Yeah,
were bad. So, and
yeah,
especially as a defenseman, that's even worse. So,
yeah.
that's part of it. I mean, that's
It
what
was
we just goes
Chicago.
back to our conversation before. I mean,
Yeah.
now he's
No, I
just
think he was in the
solid.
Seth Jones trade as well. So then he was in
Yes.
Columbus between the time of after that. I think it was what, 21. It was like before the 21-22 season.
Mm,
So, they missed the playoffs in 21, I believe. Um, yeah, they haven't made it since 20, since the bubble when they had that the 5 overtime game against Tampa. Like that was the last playoff series they were in. So, yeah, he really wasn't on great teams. He's with Florida before going on waivers. And Florida's just such a deep team. Like, like you're seeing it now in the finals and then 3 straight finals, right? So the fact that he's the odd man out, kind of like Mike Riley was last year. He's a good player. He's an NHL caliber player. We'll see how much he plays this year. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing really to complain about with that extension.
yep. So that leads us to kind of our outlook here. I guess we'll keep it on the back end before we move to some targets, but there's a lot of D men. I'll say this quick on Scott Perinovich. He's probably the first one out the door. I don't think he got a fair shake with Wah personally. I saw that they didn't have to trade their draft pick, that being the Islanders, to St. Louis if they didn't play a certain amount of games. So I get that, but I think just with that being said, there's just not enough defensemen where he's going to stay. I mean, I'm sure he's frustrated that he got traded here and didn't really play at all, but I think he was okay. I mean, he had that one bad turnover. I don't remember the game exactly, but I think there was a pinpoint. You could pinpoint to that where he just never played again.
Yeah, I think it was one of the
Pretty
games
odd
against the Rangers.
situation. What?
I think it was one of the games against the Rangers.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah. It
remember which
was
one, but
it
yeah, I
was
think something
interesting,
there.
but he's smaller, but never really got a shot. But I think that if him and like Boquist are kind of similar players in a way, then like Wall likes Boquist more. But they traded for Perinovich and they got all three of them in like a pretty short span, but they were just so injured on the back end. And that's also contributes to why the Islanders weren't great last year because they were hurt the entire season. So another thing to keep in mind for a potential playoff run. Tony DeAngelo, I would think probably comes back. I mean, I would like to see that. I like what he did, and that leads me to my next point. Like, I think D'Angelo, if you give him like a 2 year deal, maybe 3 year deal, like, it's not going to be a lot of money, like per year, maybe like 2 million per year, you would think, like something like that.
Yeah,
Um,
that's my ideal contract for
for
him.
like a
That's what I
two
was
by
talking
two.
about the other day. Yeah.
I think that, and you can call me crazy if you want, that he does the same thing as Noah Dobson, but for like a quarter of the price.
Yep.
I said it on this show the last time we did it. I do not justify giving Noah Dobson more than $7 million. and
Yeah.
it's going to be like 8 or 9 the way things are going right now. So with that being said, we talked about it last week with the Utah thing and the trade up for Higgins. That I think Dobson needs to go, and you got to find a way to get him out. But not just for the sake of getting him out, but I think that with Schaefer coming in, and like yes, a Schaefer Dobson pair could be good, but go get a forward or just go get like you can't. I'd rather use that cap space, the 8 or 9 million on Dobson, just in other places of the team. And I think, Pellick and Pullock are the other two guys in the D that they have like no trade clauses and they have longer term deals that they essentially to me are the same player. Like obviously they're different, but they do the same thing for me now. So I
Mhm.
think I need one of them out the door too, just to kind of move into that next situation. Because I think I want Isaiah George getting minutes in the NHL this year. He showed promise, went back to Bridgeport. Like, I think it's time.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
Boquist can play. One of those guys. Romanov might be gone. I mean, I think one. I think somebody's getting traded. I don't know who it's going to be. I mean, if you have Romanov, Dobson, Pellick, and Pollock, I think you could honestly say one of each of those two groupings could be gone.
Yeah, and like even Scott Mayfield too. I know Toronto showed some interest in him around the deadline. I don't remember who reported that, but yeah, it was in the weeks leading up to the deadline. Someone's gonna go because Lou's gone. Like you kind of you hear about these people saying how Lou kind of molded Wah, I guess, into what he wanted. Now Lou's gone. Wah, you would hope has that brings that fiery personality again, and now he's gonna have that communication with Matthew Darsh and kind of tell him what he's looking for, I guess. Um, Adam Boquist, like I said, is great, great fit in Wall's systems. Tony D'Angelo, I agree with you. Like D'Angelo was so good. He played a lot of minutes too. He was getting a ton of ice time.
Right.
Just there were so many injuries.
And you get the own goals too, but that's just going to happen. Like I'll take the offensive production, and that's why I'll take him over Dobson. I mean, not like he's not a better player than Dobson. That's not what I'm saying. But for the value he provides you, money wise and on the ice, it makes a lot of sense.
Yep. And then I remember just when you mentioned the own goals. I remember there was a year, I think it was 17-18, where Pellick, there's like a whole video of all these own goals Pellick scored. And then we saw what happened with him a couple years later. So that's
Right.
just hockey. That's just bad luck. It
Well, just
happens.
it goes back to Darch and Rob being on the same page now. What did Darch say in the press conference? I want to play fast style hockey, but we want to play defense too. So who does that? Adam Boquist, that type of player. I think Scott Mayfield skates pretty well and can move the puck well for being a big physical defenseman. And I still think he's the most hated on this player on this team for absolutely no reason. He led the team in plus minus last year at plus 18, which I know plus minus isn't a perfect stat, but when a team is like minus 36 on the year, I think they were, and giving up goals left and right and barely scoring, and a guy is plus 18, that means something to me. I mean, he is so overhated that the contract is very overhated. You're only paying him $3 million. He's shut down, plays a lot of penalty kill minutes, and yes, the year before he was horrible. I can't even deny it, but he was injured the entire year, and I think a lot of people have the vision, like they have one thing's on the mind. You can't get that out of your mind. And yes, he could be expendable too, but I think he should stay because he was effective down the stretch. But then again, if he goes, then he goes. Like whatever the best way you get the best six, or at least set up the thing, because it's like, do you want Dobson, D'Angelo, Boquist, Schaefer? Like Schaefer again, we don't want him playing next year, but a lot of similarities. That's why I think one of Pellick Pullock stays. Romanov is an interesting one because he's an RFA, and I think he would be interesting to a team like Utah.
Mhm.
I mean, so would Dobson. I mean, a lot of these guys, but who knows? But it's not going to stay the same, that's for sure. But I mean, if we're up to me, I think I'd trade probably Pollock, but I think he's harder to trade than Pellick, so I think Pellick would make sense. But I think you could trade Pellick and Dobson, at least if it was up to me, and then that gives you a good mix of speed and skill, and shut down, left on the back end. Because still, where's Mike Riley in this equation? Is he getting a contract? So
Yeah.
there's a lot to be answered. I think more questions on the back end than up on the front.
Yeah. Yeah, I was looking through the list of expiring contracts, and like, there's been nothing about Mike Riley. No one's talking about him. He had the heart surgery. Wasn't as good this year before the concussion that ended up leading to finding the heart issues. But yeah, that first year when we picked him up from Florida, he was great. And again, that's a guy that does really well under Wall. I agree with Mayfield that he's kind of overhated. But again, I could see him being a good piece for for a cup contender. Some people think we got to pay a ridiculous amount to dump him. Yeah, his contract's not great. The fact that he's signed till he's 38 or 39, but at 3.5 million, it's really not as bad as some people are saying. You know, I think you move him. Obviously, him and Tony DeAngelo are very, very different players. Scott Mayfield is, such a very physical, more of a shutdown guy. DeAngelo is more of an offensive guy. So not necessarily in terms of style, D'Angelo would replace Mayfield, but just on that depth chart, he kind of slots in there, so you have an opening there to re-sign him. Pulak, yeah, I love Pulak. I'm looking at a Pulak reverse retro right there. Love the guy coming up
Yep.
on the anniversary of the save. I got a picture of him making the save up on my wall. Yeah, I think he's got a full no trade clause. So
I don't think he's going anywhere, but I think yeah, that's why I think it's probably Pellick. I would like I love Pollock too, but I think that he's probably the one to go.
yeah,
Like, but I think if we're looking at the defensive structure, at least heading into the draft, heading into free agency, you got to think that all right. So Boquist is here to stay. Hopefully they bring back D'Angelo. I
Mhm.
think Mayfield stays. I mean, again, he could be involved. Like this is my speculation. Like I again, defense are getting moved. I think Mayfield ends up staying. I think Romanov ends up staying too. Just the gut I have. I really think there's going to be traction on a Dobson trade. Like, I don't know if that's just wishful thinking because that's what I want to see happen. I feel like Darch with the way he works the salary cap and the way that the numbers. I mean, they could be dead wrong about his like expected contracts, but the way Darch is like a salary cap guy, and that's kind of his upbringing with the NHL, at least with Tampa Bay. I don't think he would want to give a player like Noah Dobson, if he watches the tape, $9 million for 8 seasons, $8 million
right, and
for
like
8 seasons. So I think really he's going to try and swing a trade with him, and then maybe look to trade one of Pellick and Pollock, open things up. So then who does that leave for you? You get, we'll say Pollock's the one who stays. Pollock,
right,
you have Romanov, Mayfield, Isaiah George, Boquist, and then what? D'Angelo. I could rock
D'Angelo,
with
yeah,
that at least for this year. And then
yeah.
Schaefer comes in. You expect George to get better. Jesse Pulkkinen's going to be in Bridgeport. Like there's still some more and depending on who else they draft. So that's what I would rock with personally. So that means going out the door is Perenovich, um, and Perenovich, Dobson, and I guess Pellick for that regard. And then seventh D, you could take your pick. Maybe
Mhm.
Riley stays. Maybe Perenovich is that one. Maybe they sign somebody else. So
I think Perinovich is an RFA.
right. So maybe they just don't
So yeah,
sign him, or they trade
yeah.
him or something, or he
I
stays
wouldn't
and
even.
just
I feel like he's got like again, he didn't really do. He didn't have that much opportunity with the Islanders, but still, I feel like he'd have a little bit of value. Maybe just like a. I'm not saying trade him for like a third round pick or anything, right? We got him for I think a conditional sixth or something. So it's obviously not super hot, but maybe just kind of find a team with an extra forward or something, even just a right shot defenseman. We have no righties. I know that's the big argument about trading Dobson. Because then I mean, yeah, you got Boquist. Some people don't really see him as a legit option, I guess. But yeah, no, like I think Perunovic could be a decent player for the Islanders. It's just whether or not Wall wants to give him more of a shot this year. But I also don't think he's someone we should just not give a qualifying offer to and let him walk. Because I mean, again, former Hobie Baker winner. Obviously, that
right.
was 2020, so 5 years ago. A lot can change in that time, but I think he can still be, a solid player. He's a good skater, moves the puck well. Again, these are all just things that work under Patrick Waugh's systems.
Right, he fits the system. I would like to see him stay as like the seven. I mean, I just said trade him. I just assume that they probably want to let him go, but maybe they just wanted to keep him on the bench so they didn't have to trade that draft pick, and then maybe they give him that fair shot this year. We'll
Hmm.
see. I mean, it could work. I mean, you got to have a seventh and eighth D, especially with how many guys are hurt, and have somebody be expendable to move up and down the system. So very interesting what they're going to do in the back end. Again, all this discussion could be for naught and could be completely different to what we said. I mean, there's just so many D men and they can't all stay. A trade for the top pick, like a top pick, makes the most sense with at least one of those bigger name players. And then they don't want to retain any salary either. Something to monitor. But yeah, I definitely want Dobson out the door. Looking at some other players, I guess we'll look at the forward room. I mean, we could have a backup goalie discussion another time because that's definitely needs to be figured out. I mean, depending on what Varlamov's status is. Anders Lee's name came up, but I think that's all put to bed, especially after the press conference. The way he was with Matthew Darch, I don't see any way that he's moved. He's going into the last year of that 7x7, which we finally have made the end to. I was not happy about that when the beginning. I mean, I was happy that he stayed, but I was I didn't. It was good that they re-signed him because they couldn't lose Lee like after they lost Tavares. But like
Hmm.
I figured at the end it was going to be bad, and for like the two, not last year, but the 2 years before that, I was like, oh boy, this
Yeah.
7 million is going to hurt. But this year he had a great year, one of the best years of his career. So Not really a concern. You keep that leadership, like Paul Murray, moving into the next era. So I think at least for this year he stays. Maybe he's a deadline, move if a team's out of it at that point. And then if he stays in the offseason, probably cheaper deal, right? As we move on. I think the big one is JG Pajot, who has been in the market a lot. I know you had a lot of thoughts on this with Pajot because he was available at the deadline, and then the Islanders elected to keep him, and now his name's coming up again. And I think this is a pretty big decision for Matthew Darch to make on whether he stays or he goes. And even though it's just a 1 year player, I think it's more important than people realize.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this fact the Islanders were the best face-off team in the league this year. Pajot is a huge part of that. He's one of the best face-off guys in the league. And yeah, he's like again, you can say what you want about the contract, right? Whatever. I'm not really worried about that. We got the cap space to do it or to, keep him around this year if we want
Yeah,
to.
and only 1 year.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, and he had a pretty solid year. I know he hasn't been the same since he had that wrist surgery. I think it was in 20 or 21. But he's still a solid player. He's still, he's got the speed. Slowed down a little bit, but he's still got some quickness to him.
Well, and before you
Forecheck's well.
continue that, I think last year was probably his best, not his second best year with the Islanders, aside from when he first got here. I mean, he was really good. He
Yeah.
scored a lot of goals, more than you would have thought.
hmm And yeah, like he's a guy that kind of different than Paul Murray, obviously, because you got a centerman here. He's huge for the PK, all special teams. Like, he's a guy you can put on the ice at any time. He can play in all scenarios. And then yeah, again, you want to talk about the leadership side. Yeah, he can kind of help Richie with his face-offs. But like he's again, I see a lot of people saying to trade him. I wouldn't be opposed to trading him, but we just need to make it worth it. I saw a clip today. I don't remember what podcast it was, but I was just scrolling on TikTok, and he's talking about, yeah, no, the biggest thing with trading Pajot would be to get the cap space. Personally, I don't think we're going to go after any huge free agents, so the cap space really isn't doing much for us. Like, I don't think we should be buying at next year's deadline because, again, we're in that transition period where we're still kind of trying to make the playoffs, but I don't think we should be buying anyone big because you still want to retain all these assets for the future. So yeah, 5 million in cap space. It's nice, but I realistically don't see us doing a lot with that cap space. So keeping him around, I think, would be huge for all the guys. Again, he's well liked in the locker room. And yeah, and that's you want to argue that country club mentality, right? Whatever. You need guys like Pajot around. Like people again, going to these people who want to say we absolutely have to move. It's like you still need a good group of guys. You got to make the room, I guess, attractive for free agents. If everyone's moving around, like no one's gonna want to come here, and I know that's a big complaint about Lou. He never really brought in any big free agents. Yeah, I mean, and then just looking at how Pajot, a couple years ago, maybe you could make the argument, yeah, he's not gonna get a ton. He's got making 5 million a year, right? Whatever. This year he had a really good year, and then you would hope he keeps that up again this upcoming year. Um, Again, if we're out of it by the deadline, sure, trade him like you did with Brock Nelson. There's gonna be plenty of teams that are gonna give up way more than a lot of people think because he's the perfect guy for a playoff team. He's like the ideal third line center. I know he played on the second line a little bit last year, and I mean the offensive numbers reflected that. Like he's not a Brock Nelson offensively, but he's still very solid. He can chip in like you were saying. He had some big goals this year,
Right.
and
Clutch player.
yeah, he's huge for any playoff contending team, whether that's the Islanders or another team. But I don't think that he should just be thrown out
Right.
immediately and just traded for the sake of trading him.
I mean, just like because you brought up playoff teams, just for the sake of them being in the final, you can't tell me that Pajot on the Edmonton Oilers would be huge right now. I mean, Zach Hyman got hurt, and he's obviously a better player. Having a center that wins all those faceoffs, that can play a 200-foot game and still produce offensively, kill penalties on the Oilers, which they're struggling right now. Like, you get to the deadline, then the 5 million becomes nothing because you're like, all right. Then at that point, then you maybe retain, and then you get more. It's not worth retaining now when you still have some players to sign. And I'm really torn about Pajot, at least in this trade. Like, I like him a lot as a player, but and it's because of the team next year. And again, we're not winning the Stanley Cup next year, but you want to be competitive. And the flip side of it is, well, you can get some really good assets. Like if you're getting like a high pick and a good prospect or a really good prospect, like maybe you pull the trigger. It's really like whatever Darch decides to do, I'll be okay with, depending on the return, obviously. But maybe they want to keep the French connection going because one of the few Frenchies they actually have with
Yeah,
Darch and Waz, the men in charge. But he does so much, and I think he is such a perfect guy for Cal Ritchie to learn the center position from in the NHL, and I think that's going to go a long way this year, where maybe you have him. I saw some reports maybe they put Richie on the right wing to start the year and just learn and play with Pajot and just see how he plays center. Richie, I think, could still play center and learn from Pajot. I think both can happen. Like either he's on wing or center all year. And then if you come to the point where you're out of it and you're like, you know what, we can get more assets, then he's learned from him for 3/4 of the season. Then you could trade Pajot somewhere else and get assets. So I think for the sake of keeping the team good and just for Richie is just so important to have Pajot because the future of the team is what has to be invested in while still keeping the current team competitive. It's a tough decision. We'll see what Darch decides to do, but I'll go either way on that because the center depth, I think, for the Islanders is one of their strong suits, actually, because they could put Barzal back at center. Cizikas has played center where he didn't really last. He's been playing more wing, so he can kind of be anywhere. And, I'm sure they could find a fourth line center to plug in if they really needed to at some point, or just through free agency or somebody just being around. I mean, not like a great replacement, but just somebody to fill that void if they really needed to. But we'll see what they do. They could potentially let him go. And as some names have been out there, I mean, this could all just be fan speculation. I mean, I don't want to spend too much time on this because who knows what's true, but people have thrown around names like Marco Rossi, Bowen Byram, JJ Paterka, so like some offer sheet players, some potential trades. I mean, Isaac Howard is the one I would want, I think, just because I think it would cost much less. And I don't think, like you said, the Islanders aren't in a position to trade for anybody right now, but I think they could be players in free agency. They've been linked to Marner a little bit, not really that much. I think that's just more fan speculation. Like people like Bennett, like Sam Bennett's not would be bad. A lot of people are saying Brock Besser is more likely. I don't like that at all, personally. I don't know where you stand on that. Like
Yeah, I
great
mean,
player, but I don't think it's a good fit for the Islanders.
right, yeah, not maybe a couple years ago. I know when his name was in trade discussions a couple years ago before he signed.
Yeah, I
Just
just
yeah,
like
it was like being a
he's
short
just a
contract is
slower
expiring
player.
now.
Like I don't think it fits the way we're trying to go. We have a lot of
Yeah,
similar players to him. The one name is Nikolai Ehlers. I think would be a perfect fit. Power play, strong winger, still fast, good hands. Like that's I think the type of player that would fit the way the team is going. So that's a possibility. Not going to cost you a lot. Not going to break the bank like Marner. Still going to be like high high 8, 9, 10, AAV, like, but not gonna kill you, still can get a long term deal. That's where I would go. I don't know if you agree with that.
yeah. I mean, I know Ehlers' name was floating around last year around the draft when they were saying maybe
Right.
the Islanders moving their pick for him.
And they did poke around on him, so I know that Lou did call. I mean, we'll see if Darch is interested. I would think he would be, but
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
like that fit.
Obviously, yeah. Glad we didn't end up trading that pick. We are able to take Cole Eiserman at
Oh,
20th
absolutely.
overall. But yeah, Ehlers, there a lot of people make the injury argument, and yeah, I mean that is unfortunate. But I mean, he's a guy where I've looked at him for several years, and he's quick. He has a good shot, and yeah, like you said, you throw him on the power play. For a team that has a historically bad power play, you can't say no. You can't like completely close the door on any of these guys who are good on the power play. Yeah, Ehlers, he's gonna get a lot of money. Just there's gonna be so many teams interested in him. But yeah, no, I agree. I think he would be a great fit. You can have him up on the top line with Horvat and Barzal. If you do end up keeping them together, if you don't put Barzal at center again, I don't think he's a necessity. I don't think it's like get this guy or like the season's just done. Like I know a lot of fans are they see guy, they want Marner. Like we're not getting Mitch Marner.
Yeah.
It's just not realistic. And a lot of them see these guys, these free agents, and they think it's like an absolute necessity to get him. I don't think that's how it is with anyone this summer. Um, as I've been saying, it's kind of like a transitional period, I guess, where you still
Right.
want to compete, but you don't want to do anything too crazy. So yeah, Ehlers, if we can figure out a way to bring him to the Islanders, then great. Like I would not complain about that as long as it's not a ridiculous amount of money, which I don't think it will be. Um,
Yeah, they'll
and
be
if it doesn't end
involved.
up working out, then it is what it is.
I mean, listen, like if they get him, great. If not, then it's not the end of the world, like you said. And I think it also just helps, like transitional period. Like if you can get Ehlers on this team, that would be fantastic. But if you don't, then you just like, you know what? We have the players we have. Maybe you sign some like mid tier guy, and you just kind of see what you have. Like another year runs out on some of these longer term contracts. You free up some more cap space, and there's a really good free agent class next year. So then you could swing next year. Then you have Iserman and Richie in there for a year already, and Schaefer will be coming up. So then you're kind of in a better position to win when you're looking for players. And Sipakov came in last year, and Duclair, and Sipakov I thought was really good for the given the circumstances. Still have to adjust to the NHL game, so he'll get better. Duclair obviously need more whole weird situation. I think he'll be better. Him and Wild will shake their thing out, and Duclair, the injury set him back, and it was really unfortunate. But if he's not better, like he's obviously going to be fully healthy this year, but if he's not playing better, then some concern. But the contract's not terrible, so you could at least find a way to bury it. One more guy who I think is a very realistic target, and all along the lines of Siplikov, is Maxim Shabanov. Really good. I saw 65 points in 63 games in the KHL. Opposite of Siplikov, he's small, fast, good hands, very shifty type player. That would be a good get. And I know Lou was interested. So if they could kind of keep building this Russian empire here, that would be a solid signing because that's not going to cost you too much. Could be middle six right away, high potential. And if they could find a way to do that, then that'd be a good move because it could be like the deadline 2 years ago. It'd just be like, you know what? We're going to sign somebody small. We're going to see what we have with this team, not like, go too crazy. And then we'll make our decisions next offseason based on, what the GM sees in his first full year. So Shabanov, I'd be all in on. Ehlers, I'd be all in on. Isaac Howard, if that's a potential trade. But a lot of good young names out there that I'd be interested in. But just the RFA trade situation, just with the assets we have, is not worth it to me, although fun.
Yes, yeah, it's definitely fun to speculate about all that. But yeah, you don't want to completely ruin or not even ruin, but you don't want to harm the team's future significantly just to get one of these guys who knows, maybe they get to the island, they just don't pan out.
Start building
Um,
something, people will come.
yes, exactly. Yeah, you start winning games, start showing these free agents that there is a direction for the first time it seems like in several years. It'll be a much more attractive destination for some of these guys.
Yes. All right. Enough with that. We could talk about speculation and free agents for hours, and obviously we love everybody to be on the Islanders, but quickly we got to discuss. So Wah got his assistants. Ray Bennett, coming from Colorado previously, he won the Stanley Cup in 2022. He'll be working the power play. Bob Bugner will be running the penalty kill. Some concern from a lot of fans there as he was the coach last year of the only penalty kill worse than the Islanders in the NHL from Detroit. So interesting there, those two with the connection with Wah. But Bennett, Colorado obviously won the Stanley Cup, good power play, but then I guess they ran out of good fortune on that in that department. So he comes here, but I think that one. I think I like. Obviously, they have a lot of good players, but the power play personnel will be better this year for the Islanders. Better coach, just McLean wasn't getting it done. So that one I don't mind. Bugner, I'm a little concerned about, but it'll be a little bit different. Maybe he'll get to put in will get to put in his own style with Bugner. So again, assistant coaches important a little bit, but I like these. Ideally you get a better candidate, but who else are you going to get at this situation? So take it, move on. And I can't really say too much until we really get into the season, but you just got to expect it's going to be better, and I think it probably will be.
Yeah, it really can't get much worse than last year. So
Exactly.
they could have hired anyone, and it would be an improvement. So I'm not really too concerned with that. It's good seeing Bugner. He has that coaching experience. I don't remember how long he was coaching the Panthers, but he does have some head coaching experience. And then yeah, I guess he jumped around after as an assistant. Yeah, it's good to have another guy like that with some. He's been around.
Wah's going to have his hands all over everything, so it's
Yeah,
really going to be Wah, and these guys are going to be pushing out what Wah wants with their what they have as well. All right, and today Ryan Bonus was named AGM and Director of Player Development. That one I like a lot, that move. He left Ottawa, they mutually parted ways. I think he was looking to kind of move up like a little bit, and they just didn't really have the room there. He comes in here, going to be expecting, and many people are expecting him to be Darch's right-hand man, not managing the AHL team. Obviously, he'll be involved, very involved with that, but that's what he was doing in Ottawa. So I guess he left here to kind of be the next guy. So that puts him in position to maybe be hired if things go well here by another team. Again, if that happens, it'd be unfortunate, but you'd be happy because that means obviously we're doing something right. Yeah, no, he's got the experience. Bonus. Obviously, he's Rick Bonus' son, Bones, and
no one's this.
Bones. Bones is coming to the island. And it's good because he's helped the AHL team, not the best AHL team, but they're saying he's a really good young mind. He's worked in a lot of different areas, won a Stanley Cup with Pittsburgh in 2017. So another good young mind to help this team, help the front office, and bring it into a new direction. So I like that move as well. A lot of folks around the league think this is a fantastic move, and that he's one of the next GMs up. So another good guy to have in the room as the Islanders are in this very important period. So can't say too much because he hasn't done anything yet, but from his track record and him coming here, I think is a good place to be.
Yeah, I saw some Ottawa fans that were upset that they lost him, similar to Tampa fans that were upset that they lost Darsh. So yeah, you really can't say anything yet, But it seems to be a good hire, and yeah, it'll be good to see how the next 3 4 years go with him if he eventually ends up getting a GM job somewhere else.
And the concerns with Chris Lamoriello still running Bridgeport right now, I get it, but I'm sure it's not going to be the same. It's not going to be just free reign on that, so everyone can relax a little bit. And lastly, I don't want to talk too much about this. I think it's just worth mentioning. Lane Lambert got hired as the coach of the Seattle Kraken. Just blows my mind after what he did
Yep.
with the Islanders. Maybe he didn't really get a fair shot with the way things happened, but I don't think he was that great of a coach personally. And Seattle does not know what they're doing after getting rid of Dan Bilesma after just 1 year with a pretty mid roster, to be honest. That's all I'm going to really
Yeah.
say.
Like, I don't think Lambert was the problem with the Islanders, but I don't think he was the solution either.
He helped.
He's definitely,
That's a good way to put it.
yeah, it's like he wasn't, I don't know, he wasn't the reason every single lead was blown, but he also didn't really do anything to kind of turn that around. So yeah, who knows? Maybe he'll do better the second time around. We'll see. But yeah, no, it is kind of funny that he's back as a head coach so quick after getting fired from the Islanders. But good for him. Yeah, hopefully he figures it out. I wouldn't
We'll,
mind seeing Seattle be good, but
we'll see.
yeah, questionable decision there.
Definitely, definitely. All right, that about does it on Isles Time, episode 2. Another good one. We're keeping getting closer to the draft. Very exciting times on Long Island with the first overall pick heading our way. So we're gonna try to get an episode out either early next week or closer to the draft. I'll be at the draft party that night, so that'll be fun. See what's going on there. Some players be around. Maybe be on the Ferris wheel, which is apparently a big funny thing. But yeah, no, it should be fun. Exciting times. We're going to keep putting out some content from the show and, some thoughts as things come out, get closer to hopefully Matthew Schaefer joining the Islanders. So yeah, follow us on social media at On Isles Time, Instagram and X. Follow me at Brendan_Yerks on X and Instagram, and Cole Healy06 on X. And yeah, that about does it on Isles Time episode 2. And we'll see you in the next one.